His name was Roan Tisdale. Not a name you forget. It sounded like driftwood and smoke, like something weather-worn and a little dangerous, something that didn't belong to the city or the present day. The kind of name that lingers in your mouth after you say it, like the aftertaste of something strong. We met on a layover in Missoula. I was sitting cross-legged in a cracked vinyl chair near the edge of the terminal, drinking warm beer out of a plastic cup I didn't remember buying, thumbing through nothing on my phone, scrolling for distraction more than information. Just passing time. Just floating. He was pacing near gate 12, a duffel bag slung across one shoulder, boots too clean to belong to someone from around there. The way he moved looked like he didn't trust the ground to stay still beneath him. Like if he stopped, even for a second, something might catch up. He had that look, controlled chaos under quiet eyes, a sharp jawline, tired posture, tension just barely held beneath the surface, like he was always one breath away from either laughing or unraveling. He caught me watching him. He didn't look away. I didn't either. We didn't speak at first, just nodded. An unspoken recognition, like maybe we had been circling each other in other lives and just now finally crossed. When we did start talking, it was supposed to be nothing. Idle chatter. The kind that fills empty airports and liminal hours. Weather. Flight delays. Coffee that tasted like cardboard. Boredom disguised as politeness. But something cracked. And suddenly it wasn't small talk. 2 hours passed before I realized the terminal had emptied out, that my beer was long gone, and I had told him things I hadn't said out loud in 5 years. About my father. About New Mexico. About the last person I let in, and the pieces they left behind. He didn't flinch. Didn't try to fix it. He just listened. Laughed in the right places, asked the right questions, and when I expected judgment, he gave understanding instead, without reaching for it, like it was just how he was built. Before I boarded, he stood with his hands in his jacket pockets, leaning slightly against a vending machine, eyes steady on mine. And then he said, "You're not going to believe this, but I think I was supposed to meet you." I smirked. "That's a line." "Maybe," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting just enough. But I meant it. 3 weeks later, I was back in Spokane, crashing on a friend's couch, pretending I had work to do. He was there, too. I hadn't told him I was coming. I didn't need to. We had exchanged numbers at the terminal that day, but I didn't think he'd use mine. Thought maybe it was just airport magic. One of those moments that live only inside layovers and leave you half-haunted afterward. Turns out, he had used it. Every day. Not texting like strangers. Not small updates or vague check-ins. Texting like we'd known each other for years. Like the distance between our bodies was just a glitch in the universe, and our conversations were the way we corrected it. Inside jokes that formed too easily. Late-night voice notes. Music shared without explanation. Some texts were 2 words. Some were entire stories. All of them felt like home. Then, out of nowhere, he wrote, "I'm renting a place in Twisp for the fall. If you want quiet, it's here." There was no question mark. No pressure. Just a statement with a door wide open. I didn't even pack a bag. I got in the car and drove 4 hours without checking the weather or telling anyone where I was going. It felt reckless and inevitable at the same time. Like the kind of thing you only regret if you don't do it. The cabin was older than I expected. Wood-paneled and a little crooked, like it had settled into the hillside one piece at a time. The screen door creaked, the windows fogged at the edges, and the porch overlooked a field that rolled down into tall pines. It was the kind of place that looked like it kept secrets tucked between the floorboards and under the porch steps. He met me on the porch in a black thermal and sweatpants, barefoot, holding a steaming mug that smelled like cinnamon and bourbon. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered, and his smile was small but full, one that didn't push too hard. "You came," he said, like he'd been holding his breath for 3 weeks and just now remembered how to exhale. "I didn't want to talk myself out of it," I said. And that was the start of everything. The nights were cold and sharp, like something alive pressing against the windows, urging us to stay close without saying it out loud. We talked less with words. The conversations we had were made of looks, of pauses, of half-laughed exhales and glances that lingered too long. It started with the smallest things. Shoulders brushing on the couch when we sat down to read or sip tea. That contact, featherlight, holding more tension than it should have. We'd sit a little too close, never touching fully, just enough for the air between us to buzz. Our hands would rest on the cushions, fingers inches apart, not quite reaching, not quite retreating, and I could feel him, the heat rising off his skin like a dare. Like he knew exactly what he was doing and exactly what he wasn't ready to do. Like he wanted to be touched, but didn't trust what might happen if he let it happen too fast. On the third night, we stood together on the porch, wrapped in flannel and breath, watching the stars emerge slowly across a pitch-black sky. There was no wind, just the sound of night animals in the brush and the low hum of quiet between us. Alive, electric. He stood beside me, arms folded across his chest like he was trying to hold something in. I kept my hands in my pockets, afraid that if I moved, I'd break whatever fragile thread had settled between us. Then he said it. Low, steady, simple. "Just hold my hand." And I swear to God, my heart fell out of my chest like it had been waiting for permission to do so. I didn't speak. Didn't ask why. Didn't analyze what it meant. I just reached out. Slowly. Quietly. Like answering a question that had already been answered. He met me halfway. Our fingers twined like they belonged that way. Palms pressed together. Skin warming skin. It wasn't shy. It wasn't bold. It was just real. And in that moment, I wasn't pretending to be brave. I was. He didn't let go. Not for minutes. Not when the wind picked up. Not when the stars disappeared behind a slow-moving cloud. Not even when the silence got heavier. We stood there like that, holding hands like we were the only two people who remembered how. After that night, we moved around each other like magnets. Drawn, pulled, resisting only to be pulled back again. Every movement deliberate, every choice careful. But the gravity between us only got stronger. I'd catch him watching me in the morning, when the sunlight poured in through the uneven blinds and lit up the dust in the air. His coffee would sit untouched, going cold in his hand, and he'd just look, eyes soft, focused, like he was painting a memory he didn't want to lose. Like if he looked long enough, he could memorize every shape of me, every quiet shift in my body. I asked once, "What are we doing?" He didn't look away when he answered, "Everything I didn't let myself want before you." And just like that, the floor dropped out. That night, I stepped out of the bathroom wearing nothing but a pair of worn gray sweatpants and bare feet, my chest still warm from the shower. The cabin was dimly lit, firelight flickering against the walls, shadows dancing across the floor. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, legs apart, elbows resting on his knees. He looked up, and something shifted. He looked at me like I was something sacred, like he'd been holding a prayer in his mouth, and only just realized I was the answer to it. His eyes didn't move fast. They drifted, reverent, tracing from my neck to my waist like he'd been waiting for this moment since the first time he saw me and didn't know what to call it. We didn't rush. He reached for me slowly, one hand extended like he didn't want to spook whatever spell we were under. His fingers hooked gently into the waistband of my sweatpants and pulled me in, inch by inch, until I was standing between his knees and breathing just above his mouth. It felt like the air between us was made of glass. When his lips finally touched mine, it wasn't just kissing. It was claiming, soft at first, then deeper, then slower again. A rhythm we didn't plan, just felt. He kissed me like he was telling the truth for the first time in his life. Like this? This was the version of him that had always existed, but had never been safe to show. I kissed him back like I believed every word of it. It happened on the 5th night. We didn't undress in a frenzy. We peeled each other back like letters never sent. My shirt over his head, his thumb at my waistband, my mouth on the hollow of his throat. He trembled once, just once, and it felt like the earth spun different after that. He whispered, "Tell me if I go too far." I said, "You're already under my skin." We made love the way people do when they're starved of softness. Slow, honest, a little broken. We learned each other's edges by touch, by sound, by breath caught mid-sentence. Afterward, he kissed my knuckles and whispered, "I've never needed someone like this." I rested my forehead against his and said, "Good. I don't want to be easy to forget." I woke up tangled in him. His arm was looped around my waist, palm resting against the dip in my lower back like it had always belonged there. One of his legs was hooked lazily over mine, bare skin against bare skin. Heat gathered in every place we touched. The morning light had slipped in through the cabin window in slow gold ribbons, cutting across the sheets, catching on the fine hairs of his chest. Outside, I could hear wind threading through pine needles, birds calling somewhere deep in the trees. The scent of pine and coffee drifted in from the kitchen, mixing with the warmth of the room. The musk of last night, and the slow, steady thrum of something neither of us dared name out loud. He looked different in sleep, softer, less armored. Gone was the tightness in his jaw, the ever-present calculation in his eyes. In sleep, he wasn't Roan the runner, the stranger in Gate 12, the man who held himself like a shield. He was just Roan, breathing, warm, human. I watched his chest rise and fall, slow, deep, like he trusted the world again, if only for a few hours. And in that moment, it was the only rhythm that mattered. His lips moved without opening his eyes. A drowsy murmur. Staring's creepy unless we're dating. I smiled, leaned in, and kissed his shoulder, bare and warm beneath my mouth. Then let's not make it creepy. He let out a soft laugh, muffled into my neck, and pulled me closer, his arm tightening around me in one smooth motion. His lips pressed into the hollow of my collarbone. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. One morning, maybe a week later, maybe longer, his phone buzzed. I wasn't looking for anything, but I saw it anyway. The way his body tensed, the way his jaw locked, the way his fingers hovered over the screen like they were deciding whether to answer or destroy the thing. He slid out of bed without a word, bare feet on cold floorboards, and stepped outside, closing the door behind him with a careful click. I stayed under the blanket, suddenly wide awake, and suddenly cold. Not from the air, from the distance. When he came back, his face was a mask. Still, staring. His eyes didn't move until I sat up, legs crossed beneath the sheets. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure what to say, what to do with the weight of whatever just pressed against him. Then finally he said, voice even but hollow, I used to be in love with someone who made me feel like a liability. I didn't look away. And me? I asked, steady but soft. He blinked once. You make me feel like I'm allowed. There was silence, but it didn't stretch. It settled. Then he crossed the room and climbed into bed like he was choosing it. Choosing me. He pulled the covers back, slid in behind me, and wrapped himself around me with all the certainty of someone keeping a promise. This time, I believed it. We didn't have to say it. Whatever it was between us, it had already filled every room, every breath, every space between words. We both knew. 2 days later, after a quiet breakfast on the porch and a walk through brittle leaves near the edge of the woods, he turned to me like he'd been rehearsing the question all morning. His voice was steady, but small. Would it be too much to ask you to stay? I didn't hesitate. It'd be worse to ask me to leave. That night, we didn't just make love. We made something permanent. There was no rush, no choreography, nothing borrowed from anyone else's story. Just us, flesh and breath, fingers shaking with the weight of what this was. We touched each other like we were tracing out truths, mapping the parts of ourselves we never let anyone else see. My hands slid down his sides, slow and reverent, memorizing every curve, every scar. His mouth found mine again and again, like he couldn't decide if he wanted to speak or surrender. Eyes open, hands shaking, words gasped between kisses. There was no performance, no walls, no power games, just truth, just hunger, just two men finally seen. We moved together like we were writing something down that needed to be remembered, something only we could read. When it was over, there was no shame, no second-guessing, no silence that felt heavy. Only warmth, only us. We fell asleep skin to skin, tangled beneath the sheets, breaths sinking in the quiet. And I've never felt more like myself in someone else's arms.